Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted to be joined by the Liam Gallagher to my Noel, the one and only Keith Jackson.
You had to bring that up, didn't you?
Are you
Didn't you?
Are you an Oasis fan?
Massive, and I can't get tickets.
No, no.
And I'm beyond gutted because now that it started, and a friend of mine was in Cardiff, and I've seen the video. I mean, honestly, woke up on the Saturday morning about 26 different videos from Cardiff. It looked unreal.
Do you know
what? And listen, no, hold on here. Do you know the thing is? You know the worst thing about it is?
Go on.
My daughter, my 22-year-old daughter and a boyfriend, they managed to score tickets for it. They're going. She wasn't even born.
The only thing is, right, and maybe people can write in and tell us what you think, right? I love Oasis, huge Oasis fan. I haven't got tickets either. But do you know, I think stuff like that, do you know, think the crowd would be full with
guys like me? Yeah. Point taken.
I saw a guy the other night shazamming one of the songs because he didn't know what it was.
All right, okay.
And stuff like that.
Good, I'm glad he got a ticket.
Nah, exactly, I know. We should probably move on to football. And there's been...
before we do that, I've got another complaint.
Go on.
You know how we couldn't come in here on Thursday because the office was out of bounds because it was getting more work done at this super duper office.
Yep.
And the aircon was apparently meant to be getting fixed. And they've done a brilliant job, Daniel, I have to tell you. If by a brilliant job the aim was to turn this place into a Turkish bath. Honestly, man.
They were well on the way to doing that before.
It's worse. It's worse. Anyway, enough of that. I'm in a bad mood about Oasis, right? Because you know that way you get that, what is it, earworm. So all weekend, all I've had going through my head is all these Oasis songs and all that from the clips that I've seen. And it's actually made me in a right bad mood. The only thing that might brighten it up a little bit is if the two of them fall out before they get to Murrayfield and have to cancel it. Then I'll feel marginally better that nobody else gets to enjoy it.
They'll be all right, won't they? Who knows?
I would imagine so, aye. There's money to be made.
Aye. Well, look, there's been an actual game of football. I feel like this pre-season has been going on very long, but I think there's no international tournament. It feels longer than usual. Rangers, the Russell Martin era is well and truly underway. A 2-2 draw with Club Brugge today.
Yeah, and I think Rangers fans, Russell Martin had said ahead of the game, Daniel, that I think what he really wanted, he kind of realised there would be an issue with the level of performance just purely through fatigue. But what he did say is he wanted to sort of lay out his template and let fans see what a Russell Martin version of Rangers looks like. I have to tell you, Dan, the first half fell way short of, I'm sure, what he would have been looking for. They looked awful. I mean, they looked awful. 2 goals down after 12 minutes. Another one comes back off the post. It looks as if they were going to get an absolute hammering. So it feeds into the sort of feeling that, you know, Russell Martin is taking a big bite at this and we're about to find out if he can chew on it. Second half, much better from Rangers. Obviously, I think he's went through a few at half time. He's made some substitutions. There was certainly a kind of rise in the energy levels and the aggression. And I think you could see a little bit more from the second half what Rangers, you know, what he's got in his mind's eye. But look, do you know what? When you look at that starting team sheet and it's so many of the same old faces, I think that, you know, that might have been fairly depressing for the Rangers supporters who did bother to turn up. And then to see them go 2 goals behind, because that's what they did just about every week towards the end of last season. So not great, but I think you can be fairly pleased, very pleased, probably by the way that they responded, the changes that he's made. Diamondi came on and looked really sharp in the second half. But I kind of, you know, it's one step forward, one step back a little bit. And I've said it, Daniel, and I'm going to say it again. It probably has to get worse for Rangers before it starts to get better. And I think that game today sort of encapsulated that.
Well, look, neither of us were at Ibrox, but our pal Scott McDermott was. I caught up with him at Ibrox a little bit earlier on. Should we hear his take on the game?
Let's always like hearing from wee Scotty.
Why not? Joined now from Ibrox by the one and only Scott McDermott. Scott, the first
Daniel, you all right?
The Russell Martin era is underway.
It certainly is, aye. It was interesting. 90 minutes, to say the least. Full of intrigue. Certainly the start, the team selection, probably more questions than answers. But by the end of the 90 minutes, I think they'd have been reasonably pleased just with the improvement in the team over the course of the game, and actually coming away from it with a 2-each draw after getting the goal late on against a really good side, it has to be said, in Club Brugge. I've just been in the press conference with the manager just 5-10 minutes ago, and look, he knows there's millions to improve on. He'll have learnt loads from today, but in the end, he was actually quietly pleased, I think, especially with the second half performance and actually getting out it with a 2-each draw, because trust me, I mean, after 14 minutes when they were 2-0 down, it looked as if it could get pretty messy for Rangers at that stage.
There was a point where they were 2-0 down and Bruges hit the post.
That's
and we're kind of all over Rangers, and you did think this could be a bad day. But they did come back, and obviously Finlay Curtis, I almost said got the winner there, but got the equaliser late on. Were you a bit surprised though not to see more of his summer signings starting today?
I certainly thought Rothwell would have played a part. Asgard only signed yesterday, so maybe it was a bit too soon for him. He actually came out and did the warm-up pre-match just to kind of get himself involved. Russell Martin's just said there, I think Rothwell, Asgard and Lyle Cameron all had a really intense training session this morning before the game. So there was probably never any chance of them actually taking part. But now the team go down to England on Tuesday, St George's Park, for 5 or 6 days training. Where they'll obviously put a lot of work in. I'd imagine they'll work on a lot more specific things down there as well, almost kind of behind closed doors, if you like, with a view to the Panathinaikos Champions League qualifier coming up, and obviously the start of the season as well. So, no, listen, there's still loads of work to do. I mean, that first half, I'm looking at the team in that first half and thinking, there are a good few of these guys maybe not around at Rangers come the end of the transfer window. It was really ragged early on. You could see from kickoff what he was trying to do or what he wanted them to do. They're really high line. They'll try to press Club Brugge high up the pitch, obviously with an aggression and intensity, but it just wasn't really there. And he said it himself there in the post-match press conference. They were kind of caught in between what they wanted to do. As I was watching it, I could almost see them trying things that obviously he's implemented, but there would be moments in the game where you could almost see them drifting back into how they were playing last season. Do you know what I mean? It was really interesting. Listen, a few of the players I don't think did themselves any favours. I said it in the live match blog that we were doing. I mean, Robin Proper, Kieran Dowo, guys kind of fighting for the Rangers' future, I suppose, but they really struggled in that first half. Leon King's another one who played at centre-back. Looks as if his future will be away from Ibrox as well. So it was a bit of a makeshift team. It got better in the second half. The introduction of James Tavernier at centre-back, which was interesting.
I was going to ask you about that, aye?
Yep, very interesting. And he actually made, I think Max Aarons looked more comfortable having Tavernier next to him at centre-back. But Diomande and Bayrami in midfield as well. Never thought I'd say that about Bayrami, given some of his performances last season. But they added a real energy and tempo and intensity to the second half. Well, it's difficult because you don't know how much Bruges kind of dropped off in the second half. They were obviously really good first half. They're a really good side. I mean, I said before the game, they were one of the best teams I watched last season when they went to Celtic Park in the Champions League. So it was a tough test for Russell Martin and Rangers. That's why I think he'll actually be really pleased coming out of it with a draw, because it could have gone really awry early doors. And I know it wasn't he probably had no part in the scheduling of these pre-season fixtures, but ordinarily you would start with a comfortable, not a comfortable friendly. I mean, I remember a few years ago Steven Gerrard had Bury here for his first game. I think it was like 5-6-0 and everybody was up for it, and they kind of started a new era. It was different today, but the bottom line is it gave them a really good test, and I think you'll have learned a lot not just about in terms of performance and things that he needs to change, but I think in terms of individual players, as I say, there's a few that he probably already knows won't be part of the future here, but there's one or two, like Bayrami, for instance, who maybe people might have thought he could be in his way out. And then you mentioned young Finlay Curtis. I mean, Russell Martin said since he came in, he was willing to be kind of pleasantly surprised by people, and everybody was going to be given a chance. It's so difficult for young players to break through here. We know that. But I don't think the boy Curtis did his chances any harm. He was the only player to play 90 minutes, which shows a bit of trust for the manager, but also shows the engine he's got on him. And Russell Martin's been quick to say, probably since the day he came in, that the one kind of non-negotiable, the one main thing he wants for players and his teams is running. He needs guys that are going to run. And the boy Curtis ran all day today. Sometimes lacked a wee bit of quality or in his decision making. But I tell you, I mean, kind of 80-minute mark, he was struggling. As I say, we normally want to play the full game. But when he get put through by Bayrami for the goal, he conjured up a brilliant finish to make it 2-each. So there'll be one or two that he's kind of quite impressed with, and others that I think will probably be out the door before the window closes.
Well, on that, Scott, before I let you go, you mentioned Max Aarons. He started with the number 3 jersey, which obviously was Ridvan's.
Yeah.
Ridvan Yilmaz come on in the second half with 33, but if you're getting your squad number taken off you, you're no long for the club, are you?
I don't think so. I think you're right. I mean, it was a bit peculiar. Again, I mentioned it earlier in the blog, but I mean, to have the number 3, a new signing comes in, and you have it taken away from you, and you almost get relegated to 33. I mean, but I don't doubt Yilmaz is the kind of guy that maybe quite easy Aussie and doesn't bother about these things, and has maybe said, look, yeah, fine, have it. But that to me tells you that Ridvan's future could well be up in the air as well. I thought Yefte did okay today, especially in the first half. And I think he's going to stay because of his age and his profile. Did okay last season. But Yilmaz is the one we've spoken about for a long time in terms of they might look to move him on. They've been linked to left backs. Obviously, Owen Beck's a name that's been mentioned.
Yep.
One or two others. So, it's interesting. Just a wee thing like that with the squad number just suggests to you that he'll probably, or Rangers will probably listen to offers for him this summer.
And just very finally, Scott, did the manager give you any inkling about any more incomings in the coming week or so?
Yep, he's basically said, I mean, I think it shows you how many more he expects to come in. The fact that he said he thinks the squad will look very different again in a week's time. Now, that tells me this is going to be a busy week for Rangers. I know the squad will be down at St George's Park working hard, but in the background, in terms of the manager and Kevin Thelwell, Dan Purdy and the recruitment team, I think that's going to be a massive week for Rangers in terms of both players coming in and players going out as well. I'd expect the likes of Proper, Ben Davies, Clinton and Ciala, who wasn't involved today, and the manager said he's had a conversation with him and effectively told him that he's going to need to go elsewhere for game time. So I think you'll see a few going out and a few coming in. They've obviously been linked with Giga from Wolves and loan at the back. Connor Cody's one that's kind of rumbled on. I'm sure we've all read the links this morning again with Jamie Vardy, which, to be fair, we're pal Andy Newport put Vardy's name to the manager post-match, and he didn't rule it out. No, he didn't want to talk about individual players, but he certainly didn't rule it out. So I think this is going to be a massive week for Rangers in terms of incomings and outgoings. And as Russell Martin said, I think come the Panathinaikos game, a totally different looking squad to the one that featured today.
Scott, it's always a pleasure having you on. Much appreciated. Safe travel home.
No problem. Cheers, Daniel.
Cheers, Scott. Scott McDermott there. Keith, some interesting comments. Before we dive into Rangers, though, we've got a couple of people in the comments asking us about Celtic, and it's worth saying that we will definitely talk about Celtic in the not too distant future.
Of course, because they get it up and running pre-season on Friday night.
Absolutely, we will talk about that. But for the meantime, we'll stick with Rangers just now. We've actually got some of Russell Martin's press conference. Should we check in on that now?
Yep.
Why not? Let's hear what he had to say.
Russell, good workout?
Yeah, it was, against a really good team. So it was, I think, in terms of preparing us for a big game in a couple of weeks, it was great. It's a really good test for us. If you don't have a game like that in 2 weeks, you probably don't play an opposition like this early, when the guys have only been back for 2 weeks and worked extremely hard with lots of information. It's very different to what they've been used to. And actually, the international guys only had 5 sessions, I think, since they've been back. So I saw a lot of stuff I liked, and a lot of stuff that we need to improve on. And I learned a lot about certain people, what they can do. There's stuff that just needs to become a habit for us all the time. In the first half, we got caught in between a little bit because we had a setback, and that's really really interesting for us, because the team needs to be proactive and not reactive. So that was good. I learned a lot, and I really liked the second half. The energy, way more aggressive. It's not aggressive enough in the first half, but so early on, I'll give the guys a benefit of the doubt because they're trying so hard. And I think probably fatigue plays a little part in that with the first half team we put out.
Really nice. In the second half. Using the young lads in terms of the opportunities that they get throughout the season. Yeah, I think Josh Jennings as well. I thought Josh was great when he came on. So really, really good. I like them guys. They're brilliant young men. Zander as well. They've earned the right to stay with us for a bit, I think, because of how well they've trained, how well they've done. I'm really pleased with Finley. He's athletically outstanding and so willing. They all are. They've got good character. They're desperate to play here. They have good character. They're good young men with really good habits. That's testament to the academy. I expect the team to look different again, the squad to look different in a week's time. But in a couple of weeks, so much can happen in football, so I don't know. So I think we definitely want to do more, for sure. And also, probably some players need to move on as well at some point, because the squad's going to start looking very big and very heavy. I think, it's I don't know is the answer, but it will definitely look different in a week's time. I think, like, I've been asked about so many players, some miles away, some on the money. So basically, it's a long. I'm not going to give you an answer on that. But I guess you'll find out who's real and who's not in the next few weeks. Cyril, is just been injured. He's had a bit of a niggly ankle, so he's here today. We turned down a bid a while ago for him that was nowhere near the valuation of the football club. And he's been great. He's desperate to train. We've had to give him some treatment this week on his ankle since he's been back. I'm looking forward to working with him. So that's just nowhere near happening, and hopefully he'll get on the training pitch this week. Well, he will, and he'll start enjoying it. And but he's not kicked up one moment of fuss. He seems a really good professional, and from what everyone tells me here, he is. So, and Hamza's just been a bit of red tape. So he was due back this week with the other international players. Was at the airport and didn't quite have the right visa, so I don't think it's anyone's fault. Things have changed since he last got his visa, and so we've had to wait for him to get his new one, which he should have tomorrow, all being well. So hopefully he'll be with us. Well, he will be with us this week.
Russell Martin there. We've got plenty of comments coming in, Keith. Let me throw some of them at you, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Rangers is he okay? Says, good to be back at Ibrox today. Decent signs, especially in the second half. Bajrami looks like he gave him a shake and he realised there's a football in there. Robin Proper and Leon King, dearie me. The gaffer saying the squad is going to look different a week's time is encouraging. I'm not a huge Dessers fan, but we simply cannot sell him before the Champions League game. Danilo is simply not up to it. This comment as well, down at the bottom here, from London Lad. He says, Cortez looked bright. Aaron's wanted to see lots of the ball. Bajram in his natural position looking sharp. Curtis gave a good account of himself. Proper, King and McCausland can beat it. So there you go. That's a fairly forthright assessment.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take issue with a comment there about Cortez. I still am yet to see what it is exactly that made somebody at Rangers think it was a good idea to do a deal which would cost 4.5 million euros or pounds, whatever it is for him. I don't think he's going to cut it. There was a lot of calls towards the tail end of last season for Cortez to get more playing time. I think he started at Pittodrie and he got hooked at half time. And that was the game before Rangers had a massive European tie. And if you remember, it was like a shadow 11 went up, and Cortez did very little on that day. He didn't do much today to signify that he's going to be a meaningful contributor. Danilo, just, I don't know. He's a finisher, but I don't know what else he is. Certainly get nowhere near enough out of him today. And it's funny, I was listening to Scott and he was quite right. You could see the shape that Russell Martin wanted his team to play in, and it was almost a line of four high up behind Danilo, and trying to press, but they were pressing at all the wrong moments, and it made it really easy for Bruges to play through them. Granted, Bruges are a good side, but there's so much work for Rangers to do. Aye. And that first half performance just underlined that. They did look a bit better after the break. As I said, I thought Diamondi, looked really sharp, really bright when he came on. But I think you have to factor into that the fact that Bruges made 6-7 changes, however many changes they made. So they were weakened. I'm not surprised, Dan, that was an up and down performance. And I reiterate, it's going to take them some time. They're going to have to learn how Russell Martin wants his team to play. And I thought that was really interesting. The most interesting bit of all was when Russell Martin said that they kind of went into their shell when they got a bit of a setback, because that is last season's Rangers all over the back. Yeah. As soon as it got difficult for them, as soon as they started to hear the groans and the moans around them, they just went so far into their shells. It was incredible. And that was a source of great frustration for Barry Ferguson when he, picked up the pieces after Philippe Clement. And it points to a weakness, a real weakness. And I've seen Billy Dodds talking about that sort of mental
fragility.
Fragility. It's almost like a mental block. It's at the first sign of trouble. There's so many of these players that don't stand up to the challenge. And what Russell Martin needs is to surround himself with players that, if it does start to look a bit, things are getting a bit sticky, they get the sleeves rolled up and they get wired into it. And I think that, I've mentioned previously, I can see what he's doing. There's a structure to the recruitment drive that's currently ongoing. It's British players. And I think they've gone too far away from that. I think you need a British core, whether it's Scottish or British. You need a group of guys who understand what it is that they're involved in and what's required in order to get themselves out of a situation. To me, there's been, just too much of a scattergun approach to the way Rangers have done the recruitment over the previous summers, and it's like one emergency rebuild after the next. But there's a kind of logic and a structure to what Russell Martin is trying to put in place this summer, and Rangers will benefit from it. But it isn't going to happen overnight, and I think it's going to be, it'll almost be miraculous if Russell Martin has this team, the way that he wants it to look for the start of the season. It'll be close to miraculous, because there's so much work that needed done in advance of the summer. And now, as he mentioned there in the press conference as well, Dan, that his squad's now bloated because he's got all these guys, and you saw them with your own eyes today. Robin Propper, he's as well just getting a taxi to the airport and just hiding out in Holland for a while until that deal goes through. Leon King had a really difficult afternoon, which is a shame for him. But I don't see him playing a long-term part. You're looking at Rangers trying to... They brought in the big boy Fernandes, who looked quite good when he came on. He's a specimen. So they've got him. And he's, I think, almost in between project player and first-team ready. He's a guy that they'll want to progress themselves, nurture. But I think you're looking at two centre-halves. I think what he's talking about Connor Cody, the big boy from Wolves, you would expect that, because we were told that was pretty close. So so there's two centre halves that you would expect next week. But by the sounds of it, I think Scott's absolutely right. By the sounds of what Russell Martin's saying there, 2 players won't make the squad look really different. So I think it could be a real busy week for Rangers, and it has to be because they're in such a difficult situation. But the other key part of that is getting players out the door.
Yeah.
Because there's guys there that showed again today, they're just not going to contribute.
Time is getting away from us, but just very finally on Rangers, Keith, Andrew in the comments there saying that Dessers, he wants 7 or 8 million from him. Do you think he'll stay, given Russell Martin's comments there?
Well, what I would say is, see what he's saying about Dessers' personality in terms of he doesn't cause any problems. He's a real professional, and I think he's a bit of a leader around the place. So clearly, Rangers, and I think we were, the kind of consensus was that AEK were in about the £4.5–5 million mark, and if Rangers are deciding that that's not enough, then maybe they are looking for 7 or 8. And given the size of his contribution in terms of goal scoring, I can understand that. Also, given the fact that Danilo is right now leading that line, or was today, that tells you, that Dessers, even if he's not a regular starter or the first pick as a number 9 next season, I think he's got a contribution. So Rangers need to balance that. If they get a fee that they like the look of, and maybe that is up 6, 7, 8, who knows? Who knows? They've obviously made their own mind up. But it seems that AEK must have been further away from the Rangers valuation than we suspected. Otherwise, I think they would have been able to do a compromise and make a deal happen. And maybe AEK are keeping their powder dry and intend to come back in. But it's been quite a time lapse now between that bid being offered, being rejected, and where we are just now. And Russell Martin, certainly, he wasn't talking him down in any way, shape or form there. I don't think Russell Martin would be terribly upset if Rangers decided, do you know what, the money on offer's not enough, and he stays.
Mm-hmm. Be interesting, and we'll be here to cover it all as it unfolds. But we have to talk about Celtic, Keith. They got their pre-season up and running on Friday night with a 1-0 win over Queen's Park. Johnny Kenny getting the goal. And since we've last been on Hotline Live, they've announced a signing. Hayato Inamura has joined Celtic on a 4-year deal. The Japanese centre-half, we've obviously talked about it a little bit before in the show. But I was really surprised to hear Brendan Rodgers come out after the game and say he's not going to be a first-team player. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit concerning because we've been in this movie before with Brenton, where he's previously expressed and been quite outspoken about the need for quality, and there has been instances of players that have come in and clearly he hasn't fancied them. This isn't a kid. He's what, 22, 23?
23, aye.
23. So you would have thought if he's, going to be considered a first team player at 23 would be kind of reasonable age for that. 23 seems a bit late in the day to be coming here as a project. So that's a little bit of a concern. I'm sure that Celtic know what they're doing because they're expert operators in the transfer market, but what they don't want to do is get back into a situation with Brendan Rodgers where they're buying players that quite clearly he's got no interest in putting in his first team. Mm-hmm. It was a strange comment. I agree with you.
It kind of, I mean, to me anyway, it comes off that there's maybe a little bit of a disconnect between the players Rodgers wants and the players they're signing.
Well, what did we say towards the end of last season, Dan? I said it's going to be a really interesting summer for me because we'll get to see, do Celtic think that it's time to revert to the previous player trading model, which is not scattergun, but it's spreading the chips a bit thin across the table, isn't it? It's, bring in 5, 6 players, all, similar fees, be that 2, 3, 4 million pound mark, and hope that 2 or 3 of them excel and you can cash in and sell them at a massive profit. That's the old sort of Celtic way, which Brendan changed a little bit. He forced them down that path last summer where they spent, big by Celtic's terms on Engels and Adam Ida. Yeah. And I did say, Dan, and this is where I think the next few weeks will be so fascinating to see. I think Brendan Rodgers would have a problem if he went into the boardroom right now and said, right, you cash in on Engels or either, because I think Celtic would do quite well to get their money back on the pair of them right now. That's not to say there's not potential for them both to grow and become the players that Brendan Rodgers clearly thinks they can be, but there wasn't enough from them last season to say that that's an instant hit. And so you wonder, do Celtic say to Brendan Rodgers, well, look, these guys haven't put on the value that we were hoping they would, therefore we're going to revert to more traditional sort of strategy in the transfer market? Or if Brendan Rodgers gets to press ahead and go and, make big signature signings again, with, some serious cash behind them. That one there does look a little bit like Celtic's won that particular battle on that particular player, but it's not to say that Brendan Rodgers won't be given the cash to go and flex his muscles a little bit and bring in marquee signings later on in this window. But it's just fascinating to watch, and I kind of flagged it up because I thought it's going to be really telling to see where this goes. And yeah, I accept that comment from Brendan Rodgers was a little bit peculiar. You wonder if there is a little kind of behind the scenes, battle for superiority, or for setting the agenda in terms of the level of player that Celtic should be looking for this summer.
In the comments, Coop says overspent for Engels. I actually think this season is going to be a big season for Engels. I actually think he did really well last year. A lot of good performances, goals. I think he is going to grow this coming season. So there you go.
I would agree. I think this could be a big season for Engels. I think that his first season was a getting to know you season. Young guy coming to a new league, new club, new country, new environment, new everything, new teammates. And yeah, I think you would give him a 7 out of 10 for his first season. But that means there's room for him to grow and to improve. And I always come back to it with Brendan Rodgers. You've got a real chance of developing and improving as a player when you've got a guy like him and coaching you.
And Davo points out a lot will be decided by qualifying for the Champions League, obviously. This comment,
I'm not sure about that one, Dan. No? Because Celtic have got so, they're so wealthy now. They have, I'm just not sure that it'll be predicated on qualifying for the Champions League because we know there's more money coming, because there's a lot of money there already. And
20 million more now that comes away.
Well, exactly. So that there's, Celtic have got no shortage of money in it. And it's not as if you qualify for the Champions League, you're unlocking a different level of player where you can go and spend, 30 million, 40 million on a player like clubs down in England do. That's not going to happen because 30 million, 40 million pound players don't come to Scottish football. So there is a limit. There is a kind of glass ceiling on the caliber of player that you can target. And I think the Celtic model is a good one. If you can spend significant sums on young players with loads of growth potential, then that's where that's where you hope to cash in at the other end. But as I said, you just feel as if there's been a little bit of to and fro behind the scenes as to what Celtic's transfer window should look like this summer, and that's where it's going to be really interesting to see the level of players that come to the club. I think they've plugged some gaps in the squad with their early work, but I think the real signings are still to come for Celtic. The real heavy business end of this transfer window is yet to come for Celtic.
In the comments, Brown Warrior has had a go, as he says, how any journalist worth their salt can question Celtic's approach to transfers when we have in excess of £70 million in the bank and are going for 5 in a row. It's frankly laughable, guys. But no one's questioning the approach.
Well, no, it's a brilliant approach. Celtic, and that's what I said, they are absolute experts in the transfer market. But I think the issue is, do you go pivot further towards what Brendan Rodgers is looking for Celtic to do in the market? Or do you pivot back towards Celtic's traditional model? Because there is a difference. And that was a silly comment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would just, to go back to the Brown Warrior again, look, I just thought it was really interesting that this centre half, 23 years old, is not going to play in the first team. I just thought that caught me off guard a wee bit. But Celtic, generally, their approach to transfers, I'd go as far to say, one of the best teams in Britain, if not Europe.
Listen, they're brilliant. The way they go about their business is immaculate.
Yeah.
And, not only are they stockpiling cash in the bank, they're stockpiling trophies as well. They're in a great position. I can't recall a club being in a stronger position throughout my time covering Scottish football. Celtic are the lords of all this survey in Scottish football right now. So it's not about, questioning or saying that they're getting this wrong or that wrong, but I do think there's a strategic clash between where Brendan Rodgers wants to take the team in the transfer market and maybe, perhaps, where the Celtic board see the parameters being set. And again, we're just speculating just now. The proof of the pudding will come over the course of the next few weeks when we see who arrives and what this because it's not a rebuild. Celtic don't need a rebuild, but Brendan Rodgers does want to make tweaks that make his first 11 significantly better than it was last season.
Yeah, and Mo in the comments there kind of highlights the difference between Celtic and Rangers. Celtic will spend big when they think the right deal is available. They don't have to, do a Rangers and rebuild the team. He also says, correct, Keith, a lot of Celtic fans just love to criticise Keith because he's a Ranger. Even the takeover's called fake just because he broke the story. It's bizarre. So there you go, Keith. You've got some supporters there in the comment section.
From The Simpsons. Thanks, Mo.
Back to the bar. Now, it's not just Celtic and Rangers signing news that we need to touch on today. Aberdeen have been busy in the transfer market. Our colleague Scott Burns. It's very interesting. Our colleague Scott Burns let us know today that they have signed Adil Uchi. I mean, I've almost certainly butchered that. Uchichi.
Alchichi.
Adil Uchichi.
Alchichi.
Alchichi. He's joined on a season-long loan from Sunderland. He didn't really make much of a mark at Sunderland, but he was once previously one of these wonder kids at PSG. Second youngest ever player to play for PSG. He only made one first-team appearance, to be fair, but he was very highly rated. And according to Scott, our transfer guru, he's on loan for the season, but if Aberdeen want to keep him, they have an option to sign him for £1.5 million.
An option, but not an obligation.
I don't think it's an obligation. I think it's an option.
Right.
But that would make him, I think, at what Aberdeen's most expensive signing.
Record signing.
Yeah.
So, and we've talked previously, Daniel, about, reasons for optimism all up and down the country with different fans, different clubs. And Aberdeen, having ended last season by putting silverware in the Pittodrie cabinet, they're one of those clubs, and they've got a chairman, and me and him, Dave Clonmite, have had words previously, but you've got to admire him because, he's given it his everything to try and drive this club forward and raise the levels. And he's willing to back it up with cash as well. So yeah, that points to Aberdeen trying to again improve, go that one step higher. Try and repeat the start that they had to last season, and then go better, because obviously we know what happened after, I think, the first round of 11 games or 12 games or whatever. Aberdeen kind of dropped off a cliff. But if they can, bring in the right level of player during the summer window that would make them able to almost repeat, I don't know if they'll quite manage to repeat what they did at the start of last season, but get somewhere close to it, and then don't drop off and maintain that form over the course of the season. That's the big challenge. But you've got, a strong Aberdeen potentially, a really strong looking Hearts set up potentially, Hibs as well. And Dundee United, by the way, had a real strong first season back in the top flight. So you would look upon those six. So Celtic, Rangers, Hearts and Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee United. And if they can punch their weight, it'll be the first time in a long time that all those six major clubs have got their house in order all at the same time. And I'm hoping for that, because if that can happen, we're going to end up with some season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be here to cover it all, won't we? As it unfolds
Sure
on the
will,
Hotline
Dan.
Live. I think for now, though, that brings us to the end of Sunday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you very much for all of the comments. We always massively appreciate it. If you want to get involved in the conversation, you've got another chance to do so tomorrow at 6 p.m. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
I'll see you then, Dan.
See you then, and hope you can join us too. Cheers.